Get cozy, everybody, because we'll continue on with a game called Cabin Fever. Ha! Let's go. Where were we? Oh, right here. Hold back. It's too soon. Yeah. I decided not to move, too afraid of ruining this already perfect moment. She had come to me for safety and comfort, and I wanted to give that to her.
Of course you can stay. Get comfortable, okay?
She shifted closer to me, resting her head on the pillow next to mine. She sniffled, giving me a soft smile as I stroked her hair.
Thank you for everything. You make me feel so safe.
I watched Mallory's eyes fall shut. Her breathing became deep and slow, and though she'd fallen asleep, that little smile never faded. I kept stroking her hair. It felt so soft between my fingers, I was hypnotized. How had I lived alone for so long? How had I not known what I was missing? As the storm gradually retreated and the night grew darker and quieter, I struggled to keep my eyes open. Maybe I was a little afraid that if I let myself fall asleep, I'd wake up to find this was all a dream, but eventually I fell asleep anyway. Chapter 7. The next morning, I awoke to the sound of rain softly pelting the windows. The storm had passed, leaving only a damp, drizzly day behind. I kept my eyes closed and listened. I could hear the faint sound of the rain dripping from the downspout along the house. I stretched out my arms. The bed around me was empty and cold. Mallory was gone, but I knew she had been there because I could still feel her on my skin. The cabin felt extra chilly. I got out of bed and dressed up warm. Pulling on a pair of worn-out slippers, I made my way downstairs. Right away I spotted Mallory in the kitchen, and I felt my face break into a smile. She had a bucket and a bunch of rags out, and she seemed to be cleaning quite furiously with a cloth and spray bottle in hand.
Good morning.
She startled upright, fumbling and dropping the spray bottle. It clattered on the floor at her feet.
You scared me.
Sorry. I guess these slippers add +1 to my sneak ability.
Lol. Mallory bent to pick up the bottle. When she stood back up, I noticed how red her cheeks were, and how the rest of her face looked almost sickly pale.
Are you feeling okay?
She quickly averted her gaze.
I'm fine. I just got dizzy from standing up so quickly.
I didn't think I really believed her. She was feeling awkward, maybe even hiding something. Had I done something to make her feel uncomfortable? I looked around the sparkling kitchen, the cabinets, appliances, and dishes all gleaming like new.
You must have woken up really early to get this much work done. Did you get enough sleep?
What's that? Oh, yes I did.
Then her face softened, and her tone turned sincere.
I think last night was the best sleep I've ever had.
No. My heart fluttered with acknowledgement, and with the memory of falling asleep with her in my arms.
Good. I agree.
She nodded and turned back to finish up her chores in the kitchen. I decided to check in with work stuff, so I booted up the computer. There were only a handful of emails needing attention. I handled those and glanced through my work deadlines, making sure I was still on track with each of my freelance jobs. For whatever reason, I wasn't finding it easy to focus. I kept glancing out the windows, then zoning out as I watched the dribbling rain. It really showed no signs of stopping. I noticed an empty glass I'd left on the table outside was filled to the brim with rainwater. The soaked wooden planks of the deck looked dark like caramel. I thought about the coming winter. I have to show Mallory how to protect the garden and the hens and the bees when the colder weather came. The bees? And then there were all the fun things we could do together. I wonder if she ever gone, tobogganing before? Or had a bonfire out in the snow. If I could find somewhere online to buy marshmallows and order them right away, they might get dropped off sometime in the winter. There came a sudden clatter and thud from the kitchen. I jumped, nearly knocking my coffee mug off the desk.
Mallory?
She didn't answer. I stood up quickly, walking over to see what had happened. My throat tightened when I looked past the counter. Mallory lay sprawled on the floor, her cheeks red and beads of sweat gleaming on her forehead. Her eyes were closed, her head gently lolling to the side. Uh-oh.
Mallory!
I rushed to her side, dropping to my knees and propping her up in my arms. The touch of her skin warmed my hands. She was burning up. A groan left her lips and her eyes fluttered open.
Mallory, are you okay?
Hey there. Why are we on the floor?
Her gaze seemed to drift past me, as though she was having a hard time focusing.
You must have fainted. I knew something wasn't right. Why didn't you tell me?
I'm fine. It was just a sudden dizzy spell. I haven't eaten breakfast, that's probably it.
But I could feel her body starting to tremble. Her skin felt fever hot, and yet there were goosebumps on her arms and legs. Shit. My only instinct now was to make sure she was okay. I lifted her up off the floor.
Oh my, what are you doing? Ew! Put me down!
I quickly carried her over to the couch and put her down there, covered her in blankets and tucked her in tightly, my face set with grim determination. I brushed her hair back to feel her forehead and ignored the anxious way my stomach clenched. I darted back into the kitchen, grabbed the temperature scanner from the drawer, and returned to Mallory's side.
Honestly, I'm fine. I probably just overworked myself.
Not buying it.
I held up the scanner. It seemed to take forever and ever to come up with a reading, and when it did, my heart sank.
You definitely have a fever.
Mallory seemed to shrink under the blankets. Seeing her like this, looking so helpless and uncertain, made my heart feel like it was being painfully squeezed.
Is it your leg? Let me look at it. Maybe you've developed an infection. When did you start feeling sick? This morning? We can get your temperature under control with some aspirin, no worries. And then we'll go from there.
I didn't know when I had started to pace, but there I was, heading this way and that, making my way over to the kitchen to search for whatever it was that could help her. I filled a glass with water and reached up into my cupboards for the aspirin bottle, grateful to have kept a supply. Except it wasn't there. Where was it? Had I misplaced it? Maybe Mallory had put it away somewhere else by mistake. I brought her the glass of water anyway and used a damp cloth to cool her forehead.
Shh. Just relax and let me take care of you for a minute, okay?
She opened her mouth to argue, probably, but backed down when she saw the look in my eyes. I moved to her feet and pushed back the blanket to expose her injured leg, and I carefully unwrapped the gauze and peeled back the bandages to see what was going on. There was bruising around the wound, and it was still a bit swollen, but then it had only been a few days. The healing process for something like this would take weeks.
I should be keeping a closer eye on this.
I shook my head.
Drink your water, okay? And you should have something to eat. What would you like?
I'm not really hungry. I just feel a bit tired. I'm sure I'll feel good as new if I just have a little nap.
I let out a concerned sigh, but agreed. After tucking her in a little tighter, I crossed back into the kitchen and stood there aimlessly for a minute or two. I didn't know what to do. Make her a pot of soup, said my brain. Good idea, brain, I thought.
Carrots, onions, celery, potatoes. Potatoes? Oh no, of course I don't have potatoes.
I muttered to myself as I searched my kitchen for ingredients, and then began roughly chopping what I had. There was some rice in the pantry, I knew, and some peas in the freezer, so now I was stepping my soup ingredients into a pot with a shower of salt and dried parsley. I covered all of it with the stock I'd made from chicken bones and veggie scraps, then set it to simmer. When I crept back over to check on Mallory, I found her deeply asleep. I exchanged the damp cloth on her forehead and piled more blankets around her, then just sat and watched her, feeling dismayed. Still got a job to do, fella. Deep down, I knew what this could be. But I didn't want to think about that, and if I did have to think about it, I didn't want to believe it, and if I had every reason to believe it... No, I stood up and returned to the kitchen, gave the bubbling soup a stir, and remembered the aspirin. Started searching for it again, checking each of the drawers and cabinets. I searched it in the bathroom and the living room, even getting down on my knees to see if it had rolled beneath some furniture. That's when I spotted it, hidden beneath the couch where Mallory was resting. I reached under the couch and grabbed the bottle. A feeling of immense dread began to form within me. Already by the weight of the bottle and the silence as I turned it, but I had to see it to believe it. I popped off the cap and looked inside. The bottle was empty, at least 20, maybe 30 tablets gone in less than a week. I looked up at Mallory's sleeping face. I jumped at a loud thwack on the window. Irrationally, I wondered if someone had thrown a rock. was more likely that a bird had flown into the glass, especially considering how clean it had been since Mallory came to stay. I went to the window to check. Sure enough, a large black bird lay dead on the porch. It appeared to have snapped its neck when it hit the window. Ooh, bad omen.
Mallory would hate to see that.
I glanced back at her, a little worried I'd wake her up by talking to myself, but even the loud noise of the bird hitting the window hadn't caused her to stir. In that moment I realized I was still clutching the empty aspirin bottle. I looked down at it. She must have been taking them in secret, but why? For the pain in her leg or for some other ailment? An overwhelming sense of frustration washed over me in that moment. Without thinking, my hand squeezed the bottle so tightly that it broke. I threw the broken bottle in the trash and stormed outside to deal with the dead bird's body. It wasn't until evening that Mallory woke up. She started coughing right away, even as she sat up clutching the blankets close to herself.
Huh? What time is it?
Don't get up, at least not so fast. Let me help you.
I stood in the kitchen, tending the soup that I'd been keeping warm for hours. Mallory looked around groggily, rubbing her eyes.
But it's nighttime. Why did you let me sleep so long? I only wanted to rest for an hour or so.
That's not what your body wanted. I'm glad you got some rest anyway. It was clearly much needed.
Though I'd told her not to move yet, she bundled the blankets around her and made her way over to the kitchen.
Hi.
Oh shit. She leaned against the support beam. Her cheeks were still red and her eyelids looked heavy. The way she wrapped the blanket around herself made her resemble a colorful turtle, with her long slender arms poking out to hold onto the beam.
How do you feel?
My muscles are a bit achy, but I don't feel cold anymore. I think all the blankets you piled on top of me helped.
I nodded and turned my attention back to the stove. I wanted to ask about the aspirin, but I was nervous.
Wait, are you cooking?
She took a step towards me, trying to peer into the pot, then wobbled and had to return to the support beam. It looked as though she barely had any strength to stand. I bit my tongue, not wanting to be overbearing. I get her to sit back down by offering her some food.
I am. It's ready to eat now. Go have a seat and I'll bring you a bowl.
I half expected her to argue, to insist she could get her own bowl, or that I should sit while she served me, but instead she just backed away and went to sit at the table.
It looks really good. Thank you for making it.
My pleasure. I bet you thought I had no cooking skills. Well, it's finally my time to shine.
She laughed half-heartedly.
I look forward to seeing what you're capable of, Cooking Senpai.
She folded her blanket neatly over the chair beside her, then placed her arms on the table to form a pillow on her head. She sat with her head down until I set a bowl of soup beside her.
Oh, that looks so wonderful.
She leaned over the steaming bowl with her eyes closed, holding back her hair as she breathed in slowly.
I use lots of spices. They make all the difference when flavoring a dish.
I gave her a little wink, and she smiled.
Bon appetit.
We both raised steaming spoonfuls of soup, blowing on them softly. Only Mallory's exhalation turned raspy, hitched, and she started to cough. She dropped her spoon back into the bowl and held the hand to her throat. She drew a deep breath, looking dismayed.
I'm so sorry.
Too spicy?
No, I can't. I don't know why.
Oh shit. Mallory tried her best to stifle the coughs with little success. A nervous laugh came out of my mouth.
Those autumn allergies are so annoying, am I right?
She didn't answer. She was breathing very slowly and focusing very hard on bringing a spoonful of soup to her mouth. She slurped it, and honestly, she looked like she wanted to throw up.
That bad?
No, I...
She was wrecked with another coughing fit. Her chest seemed to rattle with each breath. I couldn't stand seeing her like this. I went to her, rubbing her back as I pushed a glass of water into her hands.
Here, drink some.
She nodded and clutched the glass hard, trying her best to drink while her chest heaved. A minute later, after she managed to take a few sips, she was able to breathe a little more easily.
I'm so... sorry. I can't seem to... stop.
You don't have to be sorry.
Tears began to roll down her face. They splashed onto the table and into her neglected soup bowl.
What if...
Shh.
More tears dripped from her eyes. More coughs rattled in her chest.
You don't have to worry. Everything will be okay. All you need to do is rest and let me take care of you. This will pass.
I think I maybe just want to lie down.
Okay. I'll help you upstairs to the bed. You'll be extra comfy there.
She gave a small nod. Her eyes were puffy and red as she gathered up her blankets in her arms. We headed for the stairs. I walked with her, taking the steps one at a time and holding her in case she lost her strength. Her skin felt even hotter, burning me even through her sleeve. She needed a fever reducer, that was certain. I made a mental note to check when the new bottle of aspirin I'd ordered would arrive. Once I make it to the upper floor, Mallory pushed me away and started coughing into her blankets, doubling over and trying to muffle the sound of her pain. I unfurled the bed covers, helped her climb in, straightening out her collection of blankets and pulling all the covers up over her.
All these blankets are so heavy. I can barely move.
Good. That means you're tucked in, safe and sound.
I brushed her hair back, tracing the side of her burning face with my fingertips.
I'm going to get you some water and things. And then I'll be back, okay?
I hurried back downstairs and started loading up a tray with water, a few damp face cloths, and her uneaten bowl of soup. I wanted her to have it right there beside her the minute she had an appetite. But of course that wouldn't be enough. I racked my brain for anything I had in the house to help drive down her fever. Then it hit me. My mother used to talk about the healing properties of basil and garlic. Couldn't quite recall the specifics, but it was something, and I had both of those items growing in my home. I rushed over to the kitchen to fill the kettle with water. While that was coming up to boil, I darted to the aquaponics room. There were 4 medium-sized basil plants sitting happily under the grow lights, waiting for me to harvest their emerald petals. In that moment, my heart inflated twice its size, full of joy that I might finally be able to do something to help soothe Mallory's pain. I plucked a handful of leaves from all the basil plants, which were different strains, but I didn't think it would matter. Next, I dug out some garlic and extracted a homemade jar of honey that was sitting on the back shelf. Looking around at all the plants and fish, I did one last scan in case there was anything else I could use. On impulse, I spotted a bright red hibiscus flower in bloom and plucked it. The lone flower had an unusually bright color amongst all the other dark leafy greens. Dashing back to the kitchen, I added the garlic, basil, and honey to the boiling water. The concoction probably wouldn't taste very good, but I hoped it would soothe her throat and help her with her cough. Delicately, I placed the flower on the tray along with a mug of freshly brewed tea. The smell was overpowering. Maybe she wouldn't be able to smell it. Ascending the stairs, I could hear Mallory coughing. She wasn't trying to stifle it anymore. I paused on the steps waiting for her to finish letting it out. A small groan followed the coughing fit. I climbed the rest of the way up the stairs, plastering what I hoped was an optimistic expression onto my face.
Hey, I'm back. And I brought you your soup, in case you have an appetite. Also, some tea that should help with that cough.
She pulled up the covers to her face in a poor attempt to hide herself. I rested the tray next to the bed and placed one of the damp cloths on her forehead. In the dim light of the bedside lamp, I could see trickles of sweat on her face, neck, and breasts.
Thank you, but you're doing too much for me.
Please, it doesn't feel like enough. Isn't there anything else I can get for you?
Her expression turned into a perplexed one for a moment. Then she forced a little smile.
Well, now that you mention it, I could use some tissues.
Ah, right. I've got some in this drawer here. Ta-da!
She took the packet of tissues and turned her face away, coughing a wet, guttural cough.
Why are you so determined to take care of me?
Her gaze was filled with hope and confusion. I took her hand in mine and gave it a small squeeze.
You would do the same for me, wouldn't you?
Her lips parted and her eyes opened wide. She gave me a soundless nod of reassurance.
It's a no-brainer. I care about you and want you to feel better. It's as simple as that.
There was a long silence between us then, exchanging our knowing looks with gentle hand squeezes. I thought about the aspirin, the 20 or 30 pills that had disappeared in the space of a few days.
Hey, I found the aspirin bottle, by the way.
She gasped, pulling back her hand from mine to cover her face.
I'm so sorry. I should have said something sooner.
I mean, yeah, you should have. Was it for your leg? To stop it hurting? Or did you... Did you know you were developing a fever? You know what? It doesn't matter. I placed an order for more. It should be here tomorrow or the next day, I think. I want you to know that I'm grateful to have you here. And I care about you very much.
Pointing her fingers to let her eyes peek through, she slowly lowered her defenses.
I don't want to be sick.
I know.
I don't want you to get sick.
I'm not worried about that.
You can't be near me. You need to stay away.
I stretched out next to her on the bed, my face resting close to hers.
I'm staying right here, by your side, no matter what.
She turned to look at the tray of soup with the water and tea beside it.
What a pretty flower. Where did it come from?
She reached over to gently pick up the scarlet blossom.
From my fish garden, or whatever you called it. It must have opened up today. I don't remember seeing it when I fed the fish yesterday.
It's beautiful. What type of flower is it?
A hibiscus. They only bloom for a short while, so we're lucky we got to see it.
She lay there with her eyes closed with the flower pressed to her nose.
The petals make a wonderful tea. I'll make you some with the other blossoms, if you like.
Mallory opened her eyes but didn't look at me. She was staring into space, deep in thought.
What is it?
Oh, nothing. The rain sounds nice. I think it's making me sleepy.
I didn't quite believe that. Seemed like there was something she didn't want to say. But I couldn't push her now.
That's perfectly alright. You have sweet dreams now.
Good night.
I lay there watching her breathe, counting the minutes between each coughing fit, resting my hand on her burning chest so I could feel her heartbeat. I had been somewhere like this before, my parents. I had tried my best to care for them when they were sick. I'd been so afraid, but I hadn't gotten sick. Part of me almost wondered, even hoped, that I might be immune. That thought in the back of my mind hadn't eased my fear of strangers, of Mallory when she first appeared in my life. But now I didn't care. Either way, all I wanted was for her to get better. Eventually I drifted off to sleep too. Next to her? Did you sleep next to her? Alright. Chapter 8, Infection. Shit. In the dead of night, something woke me up. The sound of the wind, an animal, whatever it was, it had pulled me up out of some dream. I sat up and listened. The night was quiet now. Nothing but crickets and white noise. I realized I really needed to pee. Carefully, so as not to wake Mallory, I got out of bed and headed downstairs to the bathroom, half asleep in the dark. Once I was done, I went to the kitchen for some water. I stood by the window with my glass, looking out at the sleeping world. I wasn't used to being awake at this hour. It was a little eerie. I glanced up at the dark loft where Mallory slept. For a while, her coughing had kept her and me awake, but I rubbed her back until we both drifted off. Thankfully, she was sleeping peacefully now, getting the rest she needed. Worry made my stomach feel sick and my chest feel hollow.
There's no way I'm getting back to sleep now.
I paced back and forth for a minute, dragging my hands across my face. I needed a distraction, something to shut down my brain or at least get rid of this nervous energy. Shaking my head, I went to my desk and dropped into my chair. Computers were usually pretty distracting. Turned on a monitor and pulled out my keyboard. It was a membrane keyboard, so I didn't have to worry about making too much noise with my typing. There were more emails waiting in my inbox. One was from a colleague who worked out of Vietnam. The time difference would have meant it was late in the afternoon over there, so she was probably wrapping up her workday as I sat there in the darkest hour of night. The subject line read, "Remedy distribution underway." Just reading it made my blood boil. I was so sick of these empty promises, and for what? See? Read the spam anyway, never know. I opened the email anyway, thinking maybe I could find whoever started the vile forwarding chain and send them a piece of my mind. But then my curiosity was piqued. The body of the email had a surprisingly official-looking Global Health Authority logo at its top. There were multiple language options. I scrolled to the appropriate section and started to read.
Public notice. The worldwide distribution of R-Pandavax is underway. Please read on for information on how and where to seek treatment. Patients who receive R-Pandavax have a 96% chance of recovering, up from the 45% seen with traditional medical intervention. Right, I wish. Our PandaVax rollouts are now taking place with med tents being set up outside major hospital locations in the countries and cities listed below. Symptomatic individuals should visit their nearest med tent as soon as possible for assessment and hospital admission.
Hang on, this couldn't be real, could it? I scanned down the list, then I saw it. The name of our city.
Is this actually real? Our PandaVax treatment will be administered free of charge with identification requirements relaxed by emergency order. Our PandaVax may also have a preventative effect, and individuals who have not been infected may opt to receive an immunizing dose.
I scrolled up, down, searching the screen for some evidence that this was fake, a scam, a lie. Pulled up the internet and searched our PandaVax. At least 100 articles came up, all posted within the last 24 hours. Bulletins from different news sources, statements from researchers, schedules being shared.
Mallory!
I called up toward the loft, my voice shaking like crazy, my gaze not leaving the screen. I stood up, tremors running through my whole body.
Mallory, it's real! Mallory, we have to go now!
I was dashing up the stairs, staggering toward the bed, ready to pick her up and carry her out of the cabin if I had to. Couldn't believe this. Couldn't believe our luck. It felt like a dream. Could it be real? I searched across the bed for her and she wasn't there.
Mallory?
I looked around the dark room wildly.
Mallory!
The cabin remained silent. My heart pounded. Where was she? I raced back down the stairs, calling out again and again as I searched the cabin, throwing open the door to the aquaponics room and the bathroom and the storage room, frantic. Where was she? That's when I noticed something resting on the kitchen table, a small notebook left open. I read over and picked it up. The top page had a note written in purple ink. A lump formed in my throat and my stomach twisted.
We both know I have it. My only hope is that it's not too late. That I haven't passed it to you. Because I want you to carry on with your life. Don't worry about me. I'm going back home to find out what happened to my sister. Whatever the answer is, I'm comforted to know we'll see each other again soon. I hope you know I would have stayed with you forever. But I'm thankful we had the time that we did. Love, Mallory.
I stared at the letter. No, I had only just been laying in bed next to her. I had only just found out that I might actually be able to help her. And now she was gone? I crumpled the paper in my hand, forming a tight fist. In that moment, I was ready to put a hole through my wall. My heart was racing. I couldn't think straight.
Damn it!
I had to go after her. She couldn't have made it far, not with her leg and how sick she was. I was determined to find her, convince her to come back, convince her that we should be together, whatever the circumstances. She needed to know how I felt about her, how much she meant to me. I raced to get dressed, throwing on a sweater and the first pair of pants I found, shoving my feet into some shoes and grabbing the crank-powered flashlight off the side table. It wasn't time to think, I just had to move. I burst through the front door and out onto the porch, nearly tripping down the steps before racing across the muddy lawn, my feet splashing in puddles. I was panting, sprinting almost blindly through the dark in whatever direction I thought Mallory might have gone. I was through the garden, over the hill, and nearing the woods when... Damn it. Suddenly, I slammed against the ground. Pain shot through me. It took me a moment to get my bearings and understand what had happened. The trap. How the hell? But no, I completely forgotten about moving it. How did I let this happen? Didn't I move it though? I sat against the ground, gritting my teeth that I couldn't let this slow me down. I gathered the strength to push myself up and looked back at my foot. It was my foot that had been caught, and at that strange angle, could only assume it was because of the way I'd been running so fast, practically flying over the sloping ground. I twisted and reached to release the trap, which took a few tries. Finally, I was able to scramble away and stand up, but the pain in my foot was excruciating. No time to deal with that now. I continued down the path, limping heavily and bleeding into my shoe, calling Mallory's name. As I made my way, I shoved my hand into my sweater pocket, pulled out the flashlight, the same one that had led me to Mallory that first night. Immediately, started cranking it, hoping against hope that it would lead me to her again. But as I entered the trees, I stopped hesitating. Mallory's note said she was headed back to the city to check on her sister. Most likely she's taking a footpath through the woods, the path she'd taken to get here in the first place. might be able to catch up with her if I followed, but it depended on how much of a head start she had. If I followed the old driveway instead, I'd eventually make it to the highway. It was a longer path but a more straightforward one. If I could manage to flag down a car and get a ride, then I might even reach the city before Mallory did. I had to pick quickly. I mean, we could have for the highway, but that's not good because not everyone will be like, "Hey man, I can let you in for a ride, etc., etc." Or we could continue through the trees, hope for the best. These choices suck. Both options seemed so risky. I took my chances and started down the footpath into the woods. Already I could barely walk. My shoe felt tight and wet, and every step sent pain shooting up through my soul, especially on the rugged forest floor. I shone the flashlight back and forth across the ground and the trees, avoiding falling branches and jutting rocks. The thought of Mallory being out here alone, sickly, and without any light terrified me. I knew I wasn't moving fast enough, tried to pick up the pace, ignoring the throbbing pain in my foot and breathing hard through my nose. A sudden glimmer caught my eye. I turned, pointing the beam of light toward whatever I'd seen, but the motion was clumsy, and I lost my balance. My pant leg caught in jutting branches. I fell. I felt the fabric tear. The flashlight beam showed me the white tail of a deer, startled by my fall and dashing away into the darkness. I managed to catch myself by grabbing a tree, but even leaning heavily against it, shivering cold, with the flashlight beginning to dim and my foot going numb, everything seemed hopeless. My heart ached to be back at home, back with her just a few hours earlier. That's where I wanted to be. I straightened myself up, stepping back onto the path. Tears clouded my vision. I blinked them away. That was when I noticed the rip in my pant leg. These were the same pants I'd been wearing that night I met Mallory. I had torn them coming into the cabin. That tear had been fixed with a heart patch. I remembered Mallory taking that box of clothes and seeing her later with a needle and a thread as she worked to stitch up rips and fasten buttons. But she hadn't just mended these pants, she embroidered them, left a sweet token of herself and her ability to love and care for others. My heart swelled and ached, and all I wanted to do was cry. Why did this have to happen? Why did I have to lose everyone I ever dared to love? No, I refused to accept it. I stood up, my determination to find her renewed. But my body wouldn't comply in my head. It wasn't just my foot now, but most of my leg. Numb, full of pins and needles, interspersed with pain, each stab knocking my knee out of place and sending me staggering. I wasn't going fast enough. I couldn't go fast enough. I held onto the trees and used them to drag myself forwards, too dizzy even to look at where I was going. Slowly, pale city lights grew visible through the brush. The sky was starting to lighten.
Mallory!
I called for her, but my voice came out weak and dry. I coughed and groaned. I felt like I'd never catch up to her. I'd never find her. But there, rising up before me, was the city. Finally, I reached the city. The sun wasn't up yet, and the streets were dim and mostly empty. It looked so much more decrepit than I'd imagined. The buildings were totally overgrown, and there were broken windows and crumbling bricks, and the roads were all cracked apart. Here and there, bits of "keep your distance" tape fluttered, forgotten. The people who were left did not need to be reminded. There were a lot of vandalism too. I walked past one dusty-looking grocery store, which had 3 people lined up outside, each of them wearing a heavy-duty mask and spaced at least 8 feet apart from one another. I couldn't imagine how tough it must have been on Mallory and her family living here, trying to stay safe and survive in a rundown dump like this. Mallory had said she had lived at the top of the tallest building on the street near the planetarium. Thank God I had asked her enough questions to know about that. If she was heading back to find her sister, that's where she'd be going. But would she even have made it that far? I wondered what the chances were that she'd ended up at a medical center, either on her own or because someone had decided to help her. After all, if the news Bulletin had received was true, she might actually be able to receive treatment. Ah, crap. Let's see. I'm gonna go for stopping right now because I have to prepare for work, lol. So yeah, this is Cabin Fever. Ha, god damn it. Why'd you have to go, Mallory? If I try the game for yourselves, the links are in the description. It's available on Steam. I bought it when it was a winter sale, etc., etc. That is all for today. Stay safe and take care of yourselves.